Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. Thanks for having joined this webinar. I will give a very brief overview of the Secretariat's activities for enhancing effective participation in the work of the CRC and the POPROC, and I will give this overview to mainly introduce the mandate for this work and explain the context in which this webinar is included. So in particular, I will speak about the mandate, the benefits for parties and members, and then I will briefly introduce the activities. The mandate. So the mandate to enhance effective participation in the work of the CRC and the POPROC to cooperate and exchange information among scientific and technical bodies stems from the synergy decisions. In 2008-2009, the conferences of the parties adopted the recommendations of the ad hoc joint working group, which requested the Secretariat to facilitate the exchange of relevant information between the technical and scientific bodies of the three conventions through sharing of information with one another. In 2010, at the ex-COP1 in Bali, the parties requested the Secretariats in the Omnibus decision to prepare joint activities to be included in the work plans of the three conventions, being approved in the upcoming ordinary meetings of the three conventions, including activities to facilitate the exchange of relevant information between the technical and scientific bodies of the three conventions. As a result, in 2011, the three conferences of the parties included in their respective work programs a joint activity to enhance cooperation among the scientific and technical bodies of the conventions and to identify common issues and linkages between them. This activity was called S6. Following these decisions in 2013, the conferences of the parties adopted a technical assistance program, including activities on cross-cutting issues such as support of the work of the scientific bodies of the Rotterdam and Stockholm Convention. This is activity 17 on training and capacity building activities to enhance cooperation and coordination among the three conventions. In the Omnibus decision adopted at ex-COP2, also taking place at the same time as the ordinary COPs in 2013, the decision defined a new mandate for the future by recommending to accelerate the implementation of joint activities between POPROC and CRC in 2014 and 2015 to align the scientific bodies' working arrangements to allow for mutual information sharing and effective participation, and by requesting them to discuss further steps to enhance the coordination between them. Now I will describe the benefits for parties and members. In fact, the planned activities are targeting past, current, and future members of the POPROC and CRC, as well as parties and observers. The benefits for such members and parties of an effective participation and coordination between the POPROC and CRC are threefold. First, these activities will allow more exchange of information on current names of chemicals and risk evaluations of chemicals included in both conventions, which will enhance efficiency of both scientific bodies, so the POPROC and CRC, and will avoid duplication of effort. Secondly, these activities will allow more opportunities for networking among experts to exchange experiences and support the work of the institutions in the UN regions. Finally, these activities aim at building capacity. An inception workshop is planned every year for new members of the CRC. Also, the participation in POPROC sessions will be possible as observers for CRC members. Support is provided by the Secretariat in the day-to-day activities during the intersessional period, support to CRC and POPROC members. Webinars and workshops are organized to enhance the effective participation of members from developing countries and countries with economies in transition. And actually, this webinar is one of them, one of this series, because it aims at introducing the work of the CRC in the intersessional period to also POPROC members and other stakeholders. Also, several activities are planned in this year and in general in this biennium, so also next year. For the second time, the 10th meetings of the CRC and the POPROC will be held back-to-back in October 2014 in Rome at the premises of the FAO in Italy. As mentioned, several webinars were organized on the topic of effective participation and coordination between the two bodies. And a workshop took place in November 2013 in Dakar, Senegal, for POPROC and CRC members and stakeholders at national level in the region in the French-speaking region in Africa. And another workshop is being organized in November-December for English-speaking African countries, and 2 regional workshops of this sort will be taking place in 2015, as well as new workshops for participants in the CRC as needed. This concludes my presentation. I thank you very much for your attention, and I will pass the floor to the host.
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. I will talk to you on the process of drafting a DGD and the special case of the draft decision guidance document for Fenthion ultra-low volume formulations at or above 640 grams active ingredient per liter. So the process, the drafting itself, the structure of the DGD, and the challenges. On the process of drafting, this is a part of the intersessional work. Among the working procedures for the CRC, you find a document which explains the process for drafting decision guidance documents and accompanying explanatory notes. So you have 2 working procedures, one for the DGDs for banned or severely restricted chemicals, and one for the SHPFs. So once the CRC decided to recommend the listing of a severely hazardous pesticide formulation, a work plan is prepared, which announces 2 co-chairs and the drafting group and the dates of work. In the first step, the co-chairs draft an internal proposal for the DGD. This is the first draft version. This is usually during January, when the CRC meeting has been in October. In a second step, the draft DGD is sent to the drafting group members for comments. In the next steps, the co-chairs will update the proposal based on the internal comments of the drafting group. Then the draft DGD, which is updated, is sent to all CRC members and the observers from the last CRC meeting for comments. In the next step, step 5, the co-chairs prepare the draft DGD based on the comments from all participants, and a tabular summary of comments is prepared with all the comments and how they are addressed. I will show you the example in a few minutes. In the 6th step, the DGD is sent again for a second commenting round to the drafting group. Then the co-chairs finalize the draft DGD based on the new comments. Then the DGD is sent to the Secretariat, and in the last step, the draft DGD and the tabular summary of comments are forwarded to the CRC. This is the step we are now for the DGD on Fention. Which guidance do we have to prepare a DGD? Among the working procedures, which you will find on the web page, you find the working procedures for preparing internal proposals and DGDs for severely hazardous pesticide formulations. Again, we have two different documents for the two kinds of chemicals. The intention of the working procedures is to clarify the purpose of each section of the DGD, to characterize the information to be included, and to define acceptable sources of information for each of the sections. The information source to be used in the DGD is the information from the documents that have been available to the committee during the discussion of the proposal. This is the number of the documents are including the number of the CRC, the respective, and the number of the topic on the agenda. In the case of Fention, it's CRC 9/4, plus 2 addenda which contain additional information. Generally, the wording of the description of the incidents in the case of an SHPF should not be significantly changed. You should stick to what the country proposed in their submission. And for some sections, especially Annex 4, further information, data from international reviews of the active substance may be used. And the tabular summary of comments received, I show you on this slide. It's a table containing the party which provided the comment, the section, a short description of the comment, and which is important, the response of the co-chairs. So most of the comments are accepted generally, but of course sometimes there are reasons not to accept them, then you give a short explanation here. Now I'll give you a short overview on the structure of the DGD on SHPF. We have 3 introductory sections and 7 sections. I will not read them out now because we will have a more closer look. And we have 5 annexes. The introductory sections. So the first 3 sections is introduction, purpose of the DGD, and disclaimer. This is more or less a standard text where you will not have to work on. They will be finalized by including the dates of all decisions at the end of the process. Then we have the standard core set of abbreviations. The standard set is included in every DGD, and it has to be complemented with those abbreviations that you use in your special case. Then with section 1, the real DGD starts. So you see here the title, and section 1 is identification and uses. This is of course very important because you have to clearly identify the formulation. So it gives the name of the active substance, of course, the relative amount in the formulation and the type of formulation, and the chemical structure of the ingredient. Section 2 is the reasons for inclusion in the PIC procedure. So usually this, in the case of severely hazardous pesticide formulations, this will be an incident with human health problems, for instance. This is shortly described in this section. Section 3 is the description of common and recognized patterns of use of the formulation in the reporting country. And we have several subsections, and you will note, for instance, that we have one subsection permitted uses and another one on actual uses, so this must not necessarily be the same. However, in the case of Fention, the actual use was the registered use. One subsection is on restrictions in handling or use. This might be, for instance, if the formulation may only be used with a special kind of technical equipment, and this is a restriction. And we usually also include the label provisions that are given for the formulation. And availability, applicability of protective clothing is often an issue for severely hazardous pesticide formulations. Section 4 is description of the incidents, including the adverse effects and the way in which the formulation was used. So at this stage of the procedure, usually you have already a wording of the description of the incidents from the rationale, for instance. This is included again under 4.1, description of the incidents, 4.2, description of the adverse effects, 4.3, relationship of the adverse effects observed to recognized acute toxicological effects of the active ingredient. This section may be a bit tricky because you have to connect the incident with the toxicological profile. You have to try to do so. The next subsection is on the extent of the incident, so in principle the number of people that are affected, have been affected. Sections 5, 6, and 7. Section 5 is any measure taken or intended to be taken by the proposing party. So in many cases, if severe incidents have been encountered in a party, they might decide to ban the substance, for instance, then this is included here. Section 6 is the hazard classification of the formulation. In the case of Fenthion, we only had the classification for the active substance, not for the formulation. Section 7 is on alternative pest control practices. This section includes a general subsection, which is often, usually it's the same text in all DGDs, it may be adapted. And it includes what the information the proposing party included on alternatives for this use, if they did so. Then the annexes. Annex 1 is the rationale for the recommendation by the CRC. This has been prepared in the preceding CRC meeting. Annex 2 is information on the reported incident from the incident report. This is in principle part B of the pesticide incident report form of the proposal. Annex 3 is safety data sheets on the pesticide active ingredient. So these three sections generally are copied from information available. The safety data sheet you will find on the internet usually for the active substance. For the product, usually you will not find an adequate safety data sheet. Annex 4 is on further information on the pesticide active ingredient. This is the equivalent section to Annex 1 for DGDs for BSR chemicals, but there are differences that reflect the different background of the two types. The sources of information is the information submitted by parties and that has been available to the CRC, plus results of international reviews, but really only international ones, such as WHO, IPCS, JMPR, or POPROC. Generally, you have to clearly state the references that you used. The level of detail should be on the area of concerns that is related to the incident. So in case of a human health incident, human toxicology is more important compared to effects on non-target organisms, for instance. And in many cases, you will find different values, for instance, for LD50 values. In such cases, you may give a range of values. This is the example for Annex 4. So you see this first subsection is on the physicochemical properties of the active ingredient. Then it's toxicological properties in some detail, as you see, and then you have environmental fade-in effects also. I would like to compare a bit the DGDs on banned or severely restricted chemicals and SHPFs, because they are quite different. So, for instance, the DGD for BSR chemical has 4 sections and 4 annexes. The one on the SHPF has 7 sections and 5 annexes. The focus for the banned chemicals is on the details of the risk evaluations and the final regulatory actions of the 2 parties that submitted the notification. For the DGDs, the focus is on the description of the incidents that were encountered in one party, which has to be a developing country. The sources of information for the banned chemicals is in the submission by the notifying parties. The sources of information for the formulations is mainly the information collected from all parties and of course also from the proposing party. The section further information on active ingredient for the banned chemicals is rather important because the DGD is dealing with the chemical itself, with the active substance, not a formulated product. For the SHPFs, this section has a different substructure and is maybe less important because it deals with the ingredient and not with the formulation. Just for reasons of comparison, I will show you the structure of the DGD for BSR chemicals. So I told you 4 sections. It's identification on end users, reasons for inclusion in the PIC procedure, protective measures, and hazards and risks to human health and or the environment. The annexes are further information on the substance, details of the final regulatory actions, and addresses and references. So which experience did we encounter by drafting DGDs? It's mainly the organization and decision finding between the co-chairs. It's maybe a challenge and also between the members of the drafting group to identify the appropriate information sources. It's often an issue. To include inconsistent or even contradictory information from different sources into the annexes 1 or 4 may also be tricky. Sometimes you find information, for instance, it's bioaccumulative. In another source you find it's not bioaccumulative, so you can't combine such issues. And to catch the key elements of the risk evaluation for banned chemicals or the incident, in the case of formulations, to take into account the comments received and to decide which ones you will accept or not. It's also a challenge sometimes. In the case of the pesticide formulations, it is very important which title you give the DGD, because it has to clearly define the formulation. This is also how the chemical will be listed in Annex 3. Of course, you may not use the trade name in the title because it's clear the industry might change the title. In the past, we had 2 different types of formulations of type X containing active substance at or above grams per liter, or the name of the active substance in brackets formulation type at or above grams per liter. Why at or above? In the past, we decided that we always include this wording because to prevent that a small change of the formulation would even increase the risk. Of course, it's still it's possible to change the formulation in another way, and it will still be a risk, but at least we prevent a change in this direction. And for example, in a former SHPF we dealt with, we included 2 different formulation types. In the last years, we only had 2 cases of SHPF, so we still have not much experience with DGDs on those formulations. And the incidents that are reported as basis for the proposal of the SHPF, in every case they are very variable and very chemical use and maybe also country specific, so it's always a case-by-case reflection in the DGD. Thank you for your attention, and I would like to give the floor back.
Yes. Okay, I guess that you can hear me. First, I would like to apologize and to welcome you to my presentation. Unfortunately, there was some difficulty with the IT technology, and I contacted my IT colleagues, and then they were able to fix it. Yeah, now the order of the presentation is certainly not as we wished before, but I will now present a little bit an outline of the intersessional work of the Chemical Review Committee in order to provide an overview of the tasks of the members of the Chemical Review Committee in the context of the intersessional work. The Chemical Review Committee has been established by the Conference of the Parties at its first meeting, and it has 31 independent experts from all the different UN regions. The task of the Chemical Review Committee is to analyze notifications of final regulatory action taken by the parties, and certainly also the supporting documentation that was submitted by those parties to the Secretariat. In addition, and you already are now familiar with the difference between the chemicals and the severely hazardous pesticides formulation, the CRC also deals with the latter and then has the task to analyze the information received from one party that proposes the listing of a certain severely hazardous pesticide formulation. On the basis of the review carried out by the expert, the Chemical Review Committee may recommend the listing of a certain chemical in Annex 3 to the Rotterdam Convention to the Conference of the Parties, and the Conference of the Parties then takes the decision on that listing. What are the requirements before a certain chemical is presented to the Chemical Review Committee? For a chemical, the requirements are that parties ban or severely restrict a certain chemical at national level, and as soon as the Secretariat received 2 notifications from 2 different PIC regions on the same chemical, then the Secretariat verifies whether the notifications meet all Annex 1 criteria, and if this is the case, the Secretariat submits those notifications to the Chemical Review Committee for review. The Chemical Review Committee then undertakes its work, and the outcome may be that the Chemical Review Committee decides to recommend that chemical for listing, and if this is the case, then this triggers the need to prepare a DGD. The recommendation together with the DGD are then submitted to the COP, and the COP decides on the listing. And if the COP comes to a positive conclusion that all criteria are met and that the chemical should be listed, then the chemical goes to Annex 3 to the convention. And if the COP does not come to the conclusion that all criteria are met and that the chemical should be listed, then it wouldn't be listed. So this is the standard procedure for chemicals, and for the severely hazardous pesticide formulations, Anja already informed you that the procedure is slightly different. In this case, it's only one party that submits a proposal for the listing based on experience in their own country and the difficulty they have with this specific severely hazardous pesticide formulation. Then the party may establish this proposal based on the experience and data gained in their country, and then they fill the necessary form. They provide the information that is requested in that form, and then this proposal will again first be verified by the Secretariat whether all requirements of Annex 4 are met, and in addition, the Secretariat will then collect some data from other parties in order to complete the information on that severely hazardous pesticide formulation, and will then forward the proposal to the Chemical Review Committee for their work. The Chemical Review Committee does the analysis and may recommend the severely hazardous pesticide formulation for listing in Annex 3. Again, this triggers the need to prepare a DGD, which is done intersessionally, and then it goes to COP decision making, and the COP decides either to list it or to not list the chemical. So these are the two sets of standard requirements and procedures for both the chemical and the severely hazardous pesticide formulation. The Chemical Review Committee has, when doing its work, to deal with the various sources of information. The most important one is certainly the standard notification submitted by a party if they ban or severely restrict a chemical, and together with that notification, the party may also submit some supporting documentation giving some background information on the internal procedures of that country that were applied in the context of the decision making on that chemical. Depending on the nature of the supporting documentation, the volume, the language used, and so on, the notifying party may be requested to establish a focus summary, which is then normally established in English, in order to provide a brief and concise summary of the supporting documentation. And in addition, the Secretariat requests all parties to provide some information on international trade in that particular chemical. The most important task of the CRC is certainly to review notifications of final regulatory action and proposals for listing of severely hazardous pesticide formulation. And in order to increase the efficiency in these tasks, the CRC carries out some intersessional work. And there are three main types of work that are carried out intersessionally. The first one is the reviewing of notifications and proposals for listing of new chemicals. Here, the task group reviews the information submitted by the notifying and or proposing party, and then establishes in a so-called task group a first short report of the work carried out by this task group. Then the second task is the drafting of a decision guidance document, and Anja already explained to you all the details of this work. And the third task carried out by the CRC is the drafting of guidance documents as and when they are thought to be needed for the work of the CRC. The task groups are normally established by the CRC Bureau together with the Secretariat. So there is a proposal for the members of the task group, and this is discussed between the Secretariat and the Bureau, and then they come to a decision on who should be members of a certain task group. Then there's also the question of the task group coordinator, and this again is done on the basis of the discussion between the Bureau and the Secretariat, and together then both establish also a proposal for the task group coordinators. This is the basis for establishing a task group. So the Secretariat sends out then a letter to all CRC members informing about the proposal for those task groups. But this doesn't say that other CRC members are excluded from participating in a certain task group. All CRC members are free to participate in as many task groups as they wish. However, in such a case, so if a member decides to join a task group, then this means that the member should actively participate in the work of this task group, review all the documents, and also contribute to the task group report. The different steps of the work of the task groups that do the review of the notifications are triggered by the Secretariat. The Secretariat forwards the notifications to the task group in order to carry out the initial review. And then the task group establishes a report. This report outlines the result of the review, and then may also contain a recommendation for conclusion by the CRC whether or not the criteria of Annex 2 are met. And this task group report is then submitted to the Chemical Review Committee meeting for further consideration. The timelines of the task group work are as follows. Approximately 8 weeks prior to the CRC meeting, the available notifications and the supporting documentation is distributed to all CRC members and posted on the website. Then the task group coordinators circulate an initial draft of the task group report about 6 weeks before the CRC meets. Then, after having received this initial draft, the task group members are expected to also review the information and to comment on this first draft task group report. This should normally be done about 4 weeks before the CRC meets. And then after having received all the comments, the task group coordinators finalize their report and then send it to the Secretariat in order to allow the Secretariat to make the draft report available to all CRC members, including observers, on the PIC website. And this should normally be done 3 to 2 weeks before the CRC meets. One day before the CRC meeting, all task groups meet at the CRC venue in order to continue the discussion on the task group reports in a face-to-face meeting, and also in order to address the comments received from all CRC members and also from observers. So this is quite an important task, because before it was a closed exercise done within the task group, but now all CRC members and also the observers participate in this meeting and provide their comments that then should be addressed in the task group report. And this report then goes to the CRC meeting. It will be presented by the task group coordinator to the CRC, and all CRC members will then again have a discussion on the task group, on the results of the review of the task group, and certainly will then also decide whether all Annex 2 criteria are met and whether the chemical should be recommended for inclusion in Annex 3. And if the CRC comes to the conclusion that this is the case, then it is necessary to establish a contact group, and this contact group prepares the so-called rationale for the decision taken by the CRC. So it explains why the CRC, on which basis the CRC came to the conclusion that all Annex 2 criteria are met, and the chemical should be listed in Annex 3. Having now a look to the upcoming CRC meeting, CRC 10. CRC 10 will have to deal with 3 chemicals: polychlorinated naphthalene, short-chain chlorinated paraffins, and trouble-to-2 compounds, since notifications for those chemicals were submitted. And the CRC is requested to review all those notifications against the Annex 2 criteria. And if notifications meet the criteria, then this triggers the need to adopt a rationale. And if there are 2 notifications from 2 different regions that meet the criteria, then the chemical may be then proposed for listing in Annex 3. And if this is the case, the CRC will then be requested to establish an intersessional drafting group and to adopt a work plan for this drafting group for the preparation of the DGD. And here the circle closes. You already got the information on the drafting of the DGD, and this is now the procedure for getting to that point. The preparation of the DGD, this was already explained, so that it's triggered when the CRC decides to recommend the listing of a chemical. It needs the establishment of a drafting group. The drafting group will do the intersessional work according to a work plan that is agreed during the CRC meeting. And this needs also then the identification of the key documents to be used in the drafting. And the DGD will then be drafted according to the steps that were already outlined to you by Anja, so I will not go into the details of this. The co-chairs draft the internal proposal. It will be sent to the drafting group members. Then the comments will be addressed by the co-chairs, and then the revised draft will be sent to all CRC members and observers for comment. Co-chairs will again revise the draft DGD on the basis of all those comments and will prepare a tabular summary, which in fact outlines all the comments received and how those comments have been addressed by the drafting group. And then the DGD and the tabular summary will be sent for comments. Co-chairs will finalize the draft DGD, and the draft DGD together with the tabular summary will be sent to the Secretariat in order then to be then made available to the COP. In addition to the review of notifications, which is done as an intersessional work, there's now for the upcoming Chemical Review Committee meeting also some work to be done on draft DGDs. 2 DGDs have been drafted intersessionally, one on methamidophos and one on the severely hazardous pesticide formulation that contain benthion, and this was explained in detail to you by Anja. And now the procedure foresees as a next step that the draft DGDs then will be then reviewed by the Chemical Review Committee and finalized, and then the Chemical Review Committee will forward them together with the recommendation for listing to COP7. There was also some intersessional work done on the preparation of guidance documents, and this was a quite special guidance document, which was based, in fact, on a decision taken by the joint meeting of the Chemical Review Committee and POC, which took place in October 2013. And that meeting decided that the guidance to assist parties in the Rotterdam Convention and the Chemical Review Committee when a chemical under consideration is a persistent organic pollutant should be established. And the whole goes back to a decision adopted by the extraordinary conference of the parties. The drafting group was chaired by Miriam and Azari, and you may have been involved in this exercise. It was circulated several times for comments, and now it will be presented to the Chemical Review Committee and to POPROC at their next meetings. Thank you very much for your attention, and sorry again for the technical problems with this presentation.